This is Ethan Morton from Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I am your host, Gregory Braggs Jr. Alongside me, as always, here on our post-game shows is Joe Jackson and Aidan Kunst from the Feed the Post podcast. Make sure you go ahead and follow them on Twitter and everything else. We'll get into all that as we go along. Kraig Bowers, my co-host, my trusty co-host, was at the Breslin Center, so he got to witness that amazing win live in the stands. He'll be joining us later on. But what a day here on Martin Luther King Day, the matinee, just another thriller last year. Purdue played same thing at Illinois, hostile environment, came away with a tough Big Ten road victory. And today, the exact same thing. Zach Edey, dominant once again, 32 points, 17 rebounds. Fletcher Loyer, clutch as always in the second half, starting to show, a habit of those clutch moments from Fletcher Loyer. A lot to get into today. A very exciting 62-61 win. Tyson Walker absolutely unconscious in the second half. But man, the one thing I've come away with when it comes to this team is they are tough as nails, gentlemen. These guys, doesn't matter what is thrown across them. They may not get a call. They may make a mistake, but they stay composed and they're always playing tough. And I just cannot emphasize that enough. There were certain moments that really highlighted that. At one point, Fletcher Loyer gets fouled and he just kind of laughs instead of, yelling to his coaches, why me? Why am I not getting this call? Instead, he just laughed at the moment and stared it right back in the face and continued to attack in the second half. And I think that embodies the spirit of this team. Boilers win, boiler up. Whose house is our house here today? So I'm going to let Joe start it off with our instant reactions, and then Aidan will bring it, is on deck. So Joe, what's your instant reaction to this thriller at the Breslin? You are muted, my friend, but that's okay.
Great start for me. But it was a great game, one that honestly, you almost don't. I want to say you almost don't expect Purdue to win, right? It's a tough environment. MSU's a good team. It's one that if a loss happens, you're not happy with it, but it's understandable. And Purdue didn't care. They fight. Walker went nuts in period, but he hit those 2 threes with like 2 minutes left or whatever. And each time Purdue answered, one with first corner three, the other with a Loyer and one. Just this team just doesn't care. Like they don't care that they're supposed to be young, that they're supposed to, not have experience in these situations. They don't care that, it's maybe not always the best or teams don't always have success going through the post like Purdue does. Like Purdue doesn't care about that. They just do them. And they're getting wins. Was it 16-1 or 15-1 now on the year? Just a nuts game again. Loyer, like you said, absolutely clutch down the stretch. He hit 3-4 buckets, cut 4 free throws too, I think, down the stretch. Just was lights out once again, showing like he's only a freshman, but he's built for those moments. Smith is too. I know he didn't have his best game, but he's ready for those moments too. But just a great game overall, great win. Excited to talk about it.
Yeah, the one thing we saw for the first time this season was Braden Smith in foul trouble, which was an interesting wrinkle that Purdue had to battle through. Aidan, your instant reaction here today?
Yeah, I think to me, like, this game is a great example of the big truth that has been the reason why we're so good this year, and it's that we have Zach Edey and you guys don't. He started the game inefficient, but he's such a relentless force. His conditioning level is such that he can just keep coming at you. 36, 37 minutes tonight. Michigan State just holding on for dear life. Pretty much decided we're going to let Edey beat you. It almost worked, or let Edey beat us. It almost worked. Even though he missed a couple, probably a bunch of shots that even he would say he usually makes, like, he just keeps coming. And on that final play, to be able to execute the way they did with, the two stars of the game, 2 stars of the season, Fletcher Loyer and Zach Edey, that just speaks to the resilience of this Purdue team. When you let a guy see a couple go in who's as good as Tyson Walker, you're just going to hold on for life. And they did there. They held on, man. They let Walker see a couple go in, a couple miscommunications, got Edey on Walker. He took advantage. Hit some easy shots, gave him some easy looks, but they kept fighting. They held on. Like you said, Joe, first 3 was huge to answer the first one. Walker comes down, hits another one. Loyer throws some floater up. It goes and 1. And I thought that was the moment of the game where Purdue could have let that get to 7 and it would have been pretty insurmountable. But to answer there to what Walker was doing, and then to just kind of hold on to feed Edey, and let Loyer cook a little bit, obviously helped out by that foul call there that sent Loyer to the line to put us up 1, or was it 1? I don't know what it was, but that was we were helped out by that. But yeah, just a tough, gritty win that, again, like Joe said, it's almost a little bit of a luxury. Felt like we were going to lose, so to pull that one out, I mean, that's impressive stuff. It speaks to the character of this team.
100%. 100%. And we're going to dig deep into the little things, the X's and O's, the ups and downs, the coaching, little difference, the way they called it, the way the coaches game plan from first half to second half and everything else. But before we do that, we'll get into the stats of the game. And those are brought to you by our guys at the Collector's Cave. Make sure you visit the Collector's Cave at www.thecollectorcave.com. For all your Chicago sports memorabilia needs, but also sports memorabilia outside of Chicago sports as well. They bring it all, and make sure you keep on the lookout for their most up-to-date autographs, signings, and meet and greets. They put on a hell of an event. So visit the Collector's Cave at www.thecollectorscave.com. And here it is, the stats of the game. We're going to start. We always start with our team stats overall, and then we can dig into the minutia of individual stats. But just going through it, Purdue as a team shoots 42% from the field. Michigan State red hot at 47%. Purdue gets 52 shots up, so 22 of 52. Michigan State 25 of 53 from the field. Purdue shoots 40% from 3. 4 of 10, and Michigan State shoots 32% from 3, 6 of 19. Is that correct, Joe? Because I feel like on the telecast they showed that as the opposite. Is that
what was I didn't quite catch that. I'm sorry.
It says Purdue shot 4 of 10 from 3, and Michigan State. Okay, because I feel like on the telecast they had those the opposite way, but okay, that makes sense. Michigan State did get a lot of threes up, so I'll believe what we're reading here. Yeah. Free throws, 89% from the free throw line for Purdue. A lot of clutch free throws, 16 of 18. Fletcher Loyer, who surprisingly is under 80% as a free throw shooter, knocks in all of his free throws down the stretch in the clutch moments. Zach Edey with 2 huge free throws in the clutch moments. Michigan State shoots 7 of 10 from the free throw line, 70%. AJ Hogard, who's a 85% free throw shooter, misses 2 crucial free throws down the stretch. That was a big moment in this game. 9 turnovers, under 10 for Purdue, 11 turnovers for Michigan State. Points off of those turnovers, 8 for Purdue, and 12 points off the turnovers for Michigan State. Total rebounds, Michigan State out-rebounds Purdue 29-30 on the glass, a very surprising stat. 21 defensive rebounds, 22 for Michigan State, and then both teams had 8 offensive rebounds. Second chance points tied at 10 apiece. Bench points, only 3 for Purdue and only 4 for Michigan State, leaning heavily on their starting roster. Points in the paint, no surprise here. 34 points in the paint for the Purdue Boilermakers and 16 from Michigan State. Fast break points, not much happening here. 3 fast break points for Purdue, 5 for Michigan State. 2 blocks for Purdue, none for Michigan State. 6 steals for Purdue, 3 for Michigan State. Assists, 17 assists for the Purdue Boilermakers, only 12 for Michigan State. Lead time, Purdue led this game for 23 minutes and Michigan State for 13. 13 lead changes in this game. A lot there. Joe, when I went through all that bevy of stats there, anything that stuck out to you individually?
Honestly, the thing that stood out is just, and it's kind of like duh, because it was a 1-point game, but just how even it was across the board. I mean, the big difference is obviously points in the paint for Purdue, whereas MSU is relying more on jumpers. And then that can kind of be taken into the assist part too, where, Purdue moves the ball and MSU just has shot creators, shot makers. Hogard obviously can create for others really well with 8 assists, which always stands out, just how many assists he can get. But aside from that, it was really equal, MSU has 1 more rebound. Turnovers were right there. But the free throws was big. 16 for 18 is huge. You needed every single one of them. But I don't know what do we shoot in the second half? 11 to 12 from free throw line in the second half too, which is big. So yeah, didn't miss one down the stretch. I think that's the big thing. And then obviously from an individual standpoint, just looking at Edey's stat line's fun. 32 points and 17 rebounds, 2 blocks, and no fouls, which is pretty nuts. 13 for 26. I'd assume
37 minutes played.
37,
Unreal.
Yeah. He just we didn't know if he was coming out in the second half, and he came out for the minute and a half.
They tried in the second half,
yeah.
But then Trey Kaufman-Renn had a couple bad plays and an offensive foul, and they went right back to Zach. So 37 of the 40 minutes for your freaking horse.
Yep. Yeah, and just that's insane. 26 shots. He played 37 minutes with that high of usage. Sometimes maybe you can play that many minutes, but you're not used as much. But he was just getting fed because MSU said one-on-one coverage was fine, and Edey just kept going. Definitely missed a few that he normally makes, but I know we'll get into all that later. But yeah, really, just the big thing is everything really just an even game across the board.
Yeah, definitely. And before I move to Aidan here on what stood out on those stats that we just I don't know the word. I'm just losing my mind here. Ripped off. I was going to say riled off, but that made no sense. Ripped off. I would like to ask everyone that's tuned in. We got, we're moving up close to 100 live viewers here, and we appreciate everyone's support. Please hit that like button on our YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, it would mean a lot to us if you just hit that like button. If you want to subscribe, great. That means a lot to us too, but hitting that like button does go a long way because it'll just help make its way through the algorithm chain so other Purdue fans can find us, and everybody that's interacting in the chat. We really appreciate it because it helps, keep us in line on what we should be talking about and what you guys want to hear. So stay interactive in the chat and we'll get to your thoughts and questions, and I'll continue to pull them up on the screen. Aidan, anything that stood out to you when it comes to some of the stats that we just ripped off there?
Yeah, I think going off what Joe said, the assists, right? 17 assists on 22 makes. That's a really good percentage. It speaks to the lack of guys who can create their own shot for Purdue. And I think it speaks to the tenor of the game, which was physicality, man. Like those Michigan State guards were physical. They got up into Purdue. Some of the shots that, or some of the self-created shots that we've seen from Fletch and Braden for the majority of the game until the end when Fletch got going. But, we didn't see a whole lot of that from Fletch and Braden. They hard hedged, didn't let Braden, some teams have gone under on Braden on ball screens and just let him step into that pull-up, and that's been a mistake. They didn't do that. They hard hedged. They recovered pretty well. And it wasn't really until the last 5 minutes. And that's why it felt like the game was slipping. Like I didn't think we had anybody who could create from the perimeter. And so then it's like, okay, they're up 4. Are they going to go up 6? That's going to be insurmountable, I was thinking, because of the reliance on Edey and just the fact that it's like, it's kind of 55%, 55-45, whether he's going to make that hook, with the way Sissoko was playing him. And he had a couple great spin moves, showed a little bit more dexterity in this game once he started to kind of figure Sissoko out, that he could get to that, fake that drop step and spin back in, which he did, of course, on the go-ahead bucket. But, yeah, I think it speaks to the difference in teams, like Joe said. I mean, they only had 12 assists on, I don't know how many makes, I can't remember. But, like, man, that's 25. Their team. They're isolation creators. They're
right. They're going to try to one-on-one, and that's where I wanted to go with you with it. We'll talk about some of the adjustments they made on offense, Purdue that being. But the one thing that stood out to me in this game, because everyone's trying to figure out how you handle Zach Edey, whether it's guarding him offensively, but this time on the defensive end, we saw something that I feel like we have not seen as enough of consistently from other teams, where they put him on an island. Yes, he likes to do drop coverage, as they call it, when they put him in pick and roll, bring Zach Edey to the top of the key, try to pick and roll. Zach's going to do what they call drop coverage, fall to the basket. But they forced him into isolation moments, Aidan. And I'm wondering, what was your vantage point from that strategy? How can Purdue avoid that situation? Because there was a few times where Zach's on a complete island with Tyson Walker. He knocks down 2 huge threes in a row. And I feel like if Purdue can't come up with, the counter to that, other teams are going to go to it. Obviously, you need a point guard that's dropping bombs like he was, but at the same time, it's a high percentage, one-on-one matchup. So what was your perception of how that all unfolded, and what would you necessarily do to counter it?
Yeah, so a couple things on that. I don't think it's as much of a counter as more of its execution of what Purdue wants to do. So the ones that he got switched on to Walker, I think actually what happened is they were trying to fight over the top, and they ended up getting to a situation where Michigan State's big on those 2 possessions. I think it was Cooper at the time. It might have been Sissoko. I think it was Cooper. Really did a great job of basically just posting up, boxing out Purdue's guard. I think it was Braden on one of them, and I can't remember exactly, so this could be a little off. But as I recall, I think their big did a nice job really sealing off our guard, and then Zach, couldn't get back, or else he was going to leave. He didn't have his guard chasing back up to take Walker. And I think when you get Edey on an island with someone with as good a step back as Walker, we saw it last year, letting him get on an island with Travion, right? The same exact result, same exact spot. I think they need to execute better. Like, you can't let a guy like that reject your ball screen if you're going to ice ball screens. So, if you're going to ice, you're going to force him to the sideline. Edey's going to be waiting on the baseline, but that's the key. He's waiting on the baseline. So you have to make the guard use that ball screen. You can't let him reject the ball screen or go the other way. And Jenkins did it a few times. A couple guys did it a few times, where Walker would set up like he was going to use the ball screen and go into Edey. He would cross back over. He would spin. He would reject that ball screen. And now you're letting him go to the middle, and there's a lot of space in the middle, and you're going to have a tougher time covering that because Edey's on the other side expecting him to go to the sideline. So I think it was a lack of execution by Purdue's guards more
makes
than
sense.
anything.
You got to fight through it, essentially.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you got to set it up so that he actually has to come off of the ball screen. You can't let him reject or refuse the ball screen, right? Like, make him use it. Now you've cut him off so he can't come back middle, and now Edey's waiting there in his big drop, which he's gotten really good at. So it was a lack of execution. I thought Purdue's guards did a pretty poor job overall on Walker until the end when he just hit a tough shot.
So bouncing off of that, we have a question in the chat from Chris Ruda. What is that style of man-to-man Michigan State was playing? It looked like they were 6 feet social distance off the ball and then closing the gap once Purdue caught the ball. Any assessment there?
Yeah, I think they did a really good job jumping to the ball, right? That's a big talking point amongst coaches is as the ball moves, you jump in that direction so that you always have good help side. And I think as Michigan State does that, they have good enough athletes, and they knew against Purdue doesn't have good enough athletes on the perimeter that they could recover quickly. And I think that's what they did. They were very physical with Purdue's guards. They got out and hard hedged. They pushed them around. They were okay, I think, pushing that limit of physicality over the edge a little bit, slightly over the edge. And I think that bothered Purdue's guards. I think it bothered Braden a little bit. He got a little too casual. So
yeah, though that hedging's tough, especially the way MSU actually executed. Because I'm not always a fan of hedge, which for people that may not know is like, the MSU big was very much like above Edie, who was screening when the ball handler was coming off, and so it just kind of forces the ball handler to retreat. You really have to commit to it though, I think, because like if you just kind of like half-heartedly do it, now Edie can get slip to the rim, or a ball handler can get downhill really easily, and now you have no rim protector. But MSU is, like Aidan said, really physical up there with it. Took one of Purdue's main actions is the Chicago action, which is the pin down into the direct handoff. And aside from that very last one where Loyer kind of split it, MSU just shut it down by having that big hedge up top. So now as Loyer gets the handoff, he just can't really go anywhere, and it just shuts down one of Purdue's key actions, which was, it's tough to, you just got to figure out new offense from there then for that game.
Yeah, and I thought Painter did a great job countering. They really shut off the Chicago action, as we call it, on the wide side when it was a wide pin into a handoff. And so Painter ended up going to the middle Chicago action where you throw it to Edie, and then Loyer comes from underneath the basket. And I thought they did a little bit more effective job of that in the second half, although Michigan State got that a few times too. They're really physical and they're strong, those guards. And I think for the first time we saw a team, well, maybe Rutgers really you could say too, but I think those teams were like, we're not going to let you just walk out the ball up and get into your sets. We're not going to let you just turn the corner on ball screens and get to the rim. Like, this is going to be a knock it out, drag it out kind of game. If you want to throw it in the post, fine, but you're going to have to do it over and over and over again. And finally, every time they started to make the adjustment of when Morton was out there to double off him, and it just wasn't his night. It felt like maybe he could have, and we love Ethan, obviously. He's already been appeared on the show and done the introduction for us. To me, it felt like he could have driven, into the lane, maybe on the third or fourth one after he'd missed a few shots. He could have driven, gotten a paint touch, created something else for another guy. But I certainly understand wanting to shoot yourself out of that slump, because from his perspective, he's feeling, I feel for him because he just wants to hit those shots. And I'm sure they're telling him, keep taking them, because Purdue does need him to hit those shots.
100%. I mean, that's one of the last keys to unlock. I mean, between Ethan and Brandon, which we can get into later as far as some of the criticism of what they need to step up to, I think we can get to, but we can focus on the positives for right now. And we can continue to talk about Zach Edey's dominance, but we have touched on that. But let's talk about Fletcher Loyer now, specifically, again, with 17 points. This seems to be his lucky number. I feel like 5 of 9 shooting, 2 of 3 from 3-point land, and 5 of 5 crucial free throws there down the stretch. 2 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 fouls, 31 minutes played for your freshman guard there. Just a huge game on the road. They're chanting, Foster's better. And, this guy, he's just sitting there laughing at the whole thing. I thought one of the best moments, like I said, was when he didn't get a call and the ball's going the other way, or I think it was out of bounds Boilers ball, but he got fouled driving to the rim, and he just laughed instead of like freaking out about it and letting it get under his skin. He just laughed at it, because that's what this is. This is Big Ten basketball. You're not going to get every call, especially on the road. That's how it goes. Especially if you're a freshman, the chaos is going to get ensued. I mean, we can talk about National Player of the Years not getting calls too, because I could literally spend an hour talking about that. And trust me, we will talk about that. But let's focus on Fletcher here, because, man, this guy, he just doesn't flinch. And The step back game, I think, is something, he's got the eyebrow fake. We've seen this a few times, but now with this step back game that he has, it's impressive. He's just got a lot to his arsenal. He's got good dribble technique. He's got a good eye for passing the ball. And then, he's deadly with his shot, but it's not just spot up shooting. It's shooting off the move. It's shooting on a step back, one-on-one isolation like that. And, Fletcher Loyer, right now, I mean, Braden, you could argue between the two of them who's the second best player behind Edie, and it's a good argument and a fun one and a good problem to have. Or I don't know if problem's the right word for it, between these two guys, because they both kind of take turns showing like who's more key to this team. And it's just a lot of fun watching Fletcher Loyer continue to grow. Joe, your thoughts when it comes to what Fletcher Loyer brought to the table before we bring on our guest that was live in the stands?
Yeah. Another just dominant second half. Looking at his splits, 11 minutes, 2 fouls and 3 points in the first half. And then the second half, he played all 20 minutes, 14 points on 4 of 7 shooting, 1 of 1 from 3, 5 of 5 from the line, 3 assists, 1 turnover, a steal. Only picked up 1 foul, which is big too. He didn't, I don't quite remember when he picked up his third, but I don't think it was till 8 to 10 minutes into the half. So he stayed out of foul trouble. He's just built for the moment. He's one of my, when I watched some of his high school film, one of my concerns was, okay, what's going to happen when teams run him off the line and make him dribble? And, I think he's fits right in at that too, right there. Like he can create for himself. He can get to a pull up. He can get to, he got to the rim a couple times off of, pick and roll. Purdue started running a couple more pick and rolls for him, even just trusting him, handling the ball, making the right decision. And, with the one time, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, if either of you remember it differently, but I think the one pick and roll, he just drew out the hedge and then just turned the corner, got all the way to the rim. That's high level stuff from a freshman that I think was thought of more as a pure shooter coming in. I know, he showed that he could create in high school, but just elite stuff. He, makes the right play, makes the right shot. He's obviously turned a corner shooting. I would say that pretty confidently. Just knows how to play.
Well, that's the thing. To your point, when they do these dribble handoffs where they put Zach Edey at the top of key and they start curling guys and they either hand it off to Braden or they hand it off to Fletcher. And then there's, either, a kickback to Mason or a oop to Zach Edey, or, they go straight up with it. A lot of times it's Braden Smith, and it's always, everyone always talks about how smart Braden Smith is in those, scenarios when Matt Painter dials those up. But today, Fletcher Loyer, he comes around the curl, he splits the hedge and goes, like you said, he attacks it. Instead of trying to go the long way around it, he goes right through it, gets to the rim, gets the foul. Fletcher Loyer has a lot of the same abilities Braden Smith has. Obviously, Fletcher's the better shooter, Braden's the better passer, but they both kind of are intertwined in their abilities on those kind of plays. They're very smart. They understand where each guy is on the court. They understand what their ability is, the high percentage play, and the Purdue Boilermakers are blessed to have those two guys potentially for the next 4 years. We're going to bring on our guy. He's waiting patiently behind the scenes. He was in the stands at the Breslin Center, and that's what we do here at Boilers in the Stands. We bring you all the coverage from all the angles. So, Kraig, it looks like you're in a children's room. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It was definitely exciting to be there live. It took me a while after that game was over to quit shaking. Just that whole last series, and then they had to draw it out through like 4 or 5 different timeouts there. But what a game! What a way to pull that out. We've seen it now twice at Ohio State and here at Michigan State. It got pretty loud in there, and the environment was pretty raucous. It's still no Mackey. I've been here twice now, and I'll continue to say that. I don't even think it's close. There was a lot of empty seats today, which kind of shocked me. Realize it's a Monday afternoon game, but there was a lot of empty seats in that second and third level there today. But amazing stuff and amazing grit. Loyer showing up there in the second half. Tons of physicality throughout. For some of the ticky-tack stuff that got called, there was a lot of stuff that got let go. whether it was first going to the rim or hand checking guards or whatever it might be throughout that. But yeah, special game to be out live.
Yeah, they will not be denied, Kraig. I mean, they just, like I said to start the show, I said it on Twitter, they're tough as nails. Their composure and their toughness is what's carrying through these moments. They don't blink when they make a mistake. They don't blink when they don't get a call. Fletcher Loyer on the telecast at one point gets fouled. They don't call it, goes out of bounds. It ended up, I think, Boilers ball, and he just laughed instead of like yelling to the, his coaching staff, like, why me? Why me? He just laughed at it. They're chanting Foster's better. He's laughing at it, knocking down the free throws.
You notice they stopped that after like the 5th free throw. they just stopped cold, and a couple of Michigan State fans in front of us just turned around and were like, no, he's Foster wasn't better.
No,
they ran him out of town.
It was, they realized at MSU. They realized that chant wasn't doing anything to him at all, and they eventually just stopped. But man, how big he came up! And in my post game write up after the last game, I said something about, whoa, we saw Foster Loyer in pick and roll high ball screen action twice in that game, and I'm like, is this going to be? Are we going to see more of this? And like to your guys' point, we saw that multiple times tonight. And Braggs, you jumped in there on it. I was going to say the same thing. He actually, anytime that they didn't maintain their spacing close enough, he just blew it up and split it like we used to see Carson do all the time.
Yes,
as well. So
that's
that was
what
impressive.
Great point guards do. And he's not even a point guard; he's their shooting guard, and he has that ability.
Yeah, the one thing I gotta say, man, I've been here twice to watch live Michigan State at Purdue. If any other coach in the Big Ten acted like Izzo does, they're getting a technical at some point. He's out on the floor when live action is going on. He's out on the floor when they're trying to start play after half, after timeouts, whatever, and he's chirping in the ref's ear, and they just let it go, man. Dockage said this 4 or 5 years ago. He gets away with stuff that nobody else would get away with.
Well, I mean, at one point, Kraig, you're there on the telecast on one of the final plays of the game. Purdue goes to inbound the ball. Michigan State takes the lead, and the entire Michigan State team is on the court, and on the telecast, you could not hear a whistle. I get the stadium's loud, but it didn't seem like anybody had called a timeout. The guys on the telecast are saying both teams called a timeout. It was a very bizarre moment as Fletcher starts running down the court like, what's going on? It's like the band is on the field moment. Yeah. And Fletcher Loyer's like, hey, and Zach Edey's open down underneath the basket. And they stop play. And my friend's sitting with me watching the game. I'm like, well, it's either someone called a timeout or there's a technical foul coming.
Right.
There's too many. So what was your vantage point from being in the stands? Could you hear a whistle? Did you have any idea what had happened?
We couldn't hear a whistle either, but there was 2 or 3 it wasn't super loud up around us, but you could tell it was really loud down on the floor where the student section was, because that part was packed. And there were several whistles throughout the day that we couldn't hear up from where we were. So it wouldn't shock me if there was one and we just didn't hear it. But they announced that as a timeout for Michigan State first. I don't know if it had already gone to break yet or not, but they announced it as a timeout for MSU. And then they came back on like 5 seconds later and announced it as a timeout for Purdue. So there was all kinds of confusion all the way around.
Yeah, they did that a few times. It felt on the broadcast. They didn't know if it was a timeout for Purdue or if Painter or if Izzo had taken it. Just a weird game. I don't think the refs really knew how to ref this game. This level of physicality, they just were indecisive, and that's just how it is in the Big Ten. I get it, but it was weird. It was a weirdly officiated game, man.
Yeah, Ant Wright has tried to call out that Edey has had 0 or 1 foul in the last 10 games or something, but it's like that happened without Big Ten refs too. Like he was the same way in the non-conference game. He's only been in foul trouble 1 time all year, so like it's not a Big Ten refs thing. It's Zach's gotten better at not drawing fouls, and there's no infraction for being big and being able to reach over people.
Yeah, and he's starting to get most hated status on Twitter, Edey, with the no fouls called, the dominance. Like, he is ascending to a level of hatred that not many have. And if he keeps this up, I think, that he's just big, all that kind of stuff. I think that's going to keep up. But it was hard to deny him today.
And he started to get animated after some dunks as well.
He got an and one on one of them, and he yelled it to the crowd. He's not yelling it directly at the ref because you get a T. It's ridiculous. He gets fouled before he gets the ball. he is fouled. He is being pushed. He's being held. I mean, the one time it should have went the other way was the hook. I thought that was a hook and hold on Zach, and they called the foul on Michigan State, and they didn't review it, which was kind of shocking to me because normally in those situations, they at least go to the booth on a hook and hold. But for the majority of the game, he and Caleb First were getting pushed off their spot pre-pass in or when the shot goes up and going for the rebound. These guys are getting pushed out of the way. And every time Zach goes up for a shot, he is getting fouled. I understand you can't call it every time, but it gets to a point where it's kind of disrespectful. He's not a freshman anymore. He's a National Player of the Year front runner and candidate, and he deserves those calls. Fletcher Loyer doesn't get the call, all right, but Zach Edey deserves those calls, and it really pisses me off at this point to watch it. And it's hilarious to watch the other team and the fans think, because we got to play this cheat code of a human being, that we deserve to maul this guy all game to keep it even.
My thing with the ED fouls, like, if you want to draw fouls on him, then try him at the rim, and teams don't. Like,
right.
Yeah, maybe he could have got called for an over the back somewhere in the game, but like, if you aren't attacking him at the rim, he's not going to get fouls. And Purdue's, I haven't checked recently, they're top 2 or 3 in defensive, like, allowing the fewest amount of shots at the rim. Teams don't try Edey, so like, if you don't go into him, he's not going to draw fouls. Like, I'm not a big refs guy. I think just my overall take is they're bad in general for the most part. But like, for the people that are complaining, like, that's my big thing, is that if MSU like relentlessly attacked him and he ended up with 0 fouls, okay, maybe you have a point. But like, they took 10 shots at the rim. I think 3 or 4 of those was when TKR was in, and maybe 1 or 2 was in fast break. So they took 3 to 4 shots at the rim. Okay, like,
got blocked on half of those.
So like, I don't. That's where my issue is with it all. It's just like, you I don't think you can complain as much unless teams actually try him at the rim, and they don't.
Yeah.
Hey, did Morton get pushed off on both of those plays where he like fell backwards? I didn't get I couldn't see a replay.
Maybe one, but
I thought the first one where he went sliding, I thought that was a bit of a flop, honestly. I don't know that.
I think so too. I think the second one he might have.
Hogard's a bully, man, and I think we could transition to that. Like, basically Purdue's lack of a second perimeter defensive weapon. Like, they decided from the jump, and I think most of us who had watched some MSU were thinking going into the game, like, okay, Hogard's going to be the guy who gives us some trouble because he's so good in that in-between game that Purdue likes to give up. And Walker obviously hits those too, and he did that on steroids today. But, like, we've only got one guy, and it's Morton, who can really consistently guard a top-tier perimeter player. So when you have 2 of them like MSU does, that's a tough matchup for Purdue. And obviously that was exploited today. Like, both those guys were just hitting tough shots. I know, Kraig, we've talked about in the past, like, the whole drop coverage philosophy, like letting them get those shots. But, man, I felt like they played him fairly well today, and he just went unconscious outside of the miscommunication with the ED switches. And felt like they played Hogard pretty well because Morton was on him. And like we talked about earlier before you got on, there was some problems with the ball screen coverage with Walker. But that's a tough matchup for Purdue. I kind of like the makeup of that MSU team, especially without Hall. But they might be in trouble without Hall if he's out for the long run here.
Yeah, I think that matchup against us, to just be able to spread us out and go small ball and try to put Zach in a ton of high ball screen action, that works. I don't, who knows what happens if Hall's here. Maybe they give him a lot more shots and Walker never really gets heated up and gets going. You can't say one way or another, but yeah, I mean, this is, everybody says put Zach in a bunch of ball screen action, and it hasn't really worked for the most part consistently long enough through the entire game. This was the first game where I thought they just exploited it for all 40 minutes, really. But sometimes they were just flat out putting those guys in ISO too, and kind of letting them break them down one-on-one. So
yeah, the last shot, I mean, that was just an ISO. That wasn't Zach's fault. Tyson just hit a tough shot.
Yeah. Who thought the Tyson? I mean, who thought the Tyson Walker final shot wasn't going in? Is probably the better. I don't know if there's one Purdue fan when that left his hand that was like, okay, that's off. I mean,
did you have an angle on it, Kraig?
I mean, I was sitting on the basically center court, way up, but basically center court. And when it left, it looked like it was online, but you could tell it was pretty short, pretty quick too. And man, you want to talk about life getting sucked out of a building.
I bet.
That as soon as they realized that was going to be an air ball, it just.
Well, and it was almost in the exact same shot Tyson Walker hit the game-winning 3 last year, so
Yeah.
it was interesting to see that unfold. It was a good inbounds play by them to get it down court. Brandon tips it out of bounds, and the whole, I don't know how much you saw this in the stadium, Kraig, but on the telecast when they showed the replay, Brandon tips it, and the shot clock people, they don't start the clock right away when Brandon tips it, and then they go to the review booth because once he tipped it, then there's obviously too much tenths of a second ticked off when it went out of bounds. But as they pointed out on the telecast, they didn't start the clock when they should have. So they gave them 1.8, but it really should have been about 1 second if they were actually being fair to the situation. So, but it was a good strategy by them. I mean, a little bit of luck too, with Brandon not catching it and only being able to get a finger on it and tipping it out of bounds. But man, that was, at that point though, that Purdue took the lead at the end. If they had lost that game, I would have been completely fine with it. Yeah, we'd be pissed, but you couldn't say that Purdue didn't do everything in their power to win that game.
Well, hitting 3 missed layups right at the rim with nobody guarding.
Oh, my God. The Braden Smith one was insane.
They could have done that. So,
yeah.
What were you going to say, Aidan?
No, I didn't have anything. Joe, you go ahead.
I was. Do you know the name of that play? Because they were trying to on that last second play. Because they were trying to draw a foul on like running the baseline. Do you know what that play's called? Because I've heard it. It's like it might be like it honestly might be Hoosier or something like that. But that's what they were trying. They were hopefully trying to draw a foul too on running the baseline. They had, I think it was Aikens come up, and they were just hoping Morton like plows into him to draw a foul. But
yeah, and I
Morton
think
just
honestly
saw it and ignored it.
I don't know that if Brandon hadn't gotten a hand on that, I don't know that Hauser wouldn't have had a turnaround in rhythm long two that he could have hit. So I think that's a heck of a play by Brandon. We could talk Brandon. The bench I felt didn't give a whole lot. Kind of exposed a little bit of Purdue's lack of depth with some of the early foul trouble and just having to put guys in spots they're not used to. It felt like TKR struggled. Some calls on him that he seemed to not really understand kind of messed with him. Gillis, I thought, came out really looked good early. And then I don't know, someone in the comments had said, do you know if he got injured? I hadn't seen that. That would probably be a question that
I was worried Braden got injured when he was laying on the floor to end the first half.
Yeah.
Michael Hogg's asking in the chat if we're going to pull up question or comments in the chat. We're doing our best here. We're moving along, talking about a lot of things. We're a 4-man band here, so I try my best to change the cameras and do a little production with this. But I'm trying my best to keep the chat up. And hey, shout out to you guys in the chat because it's been as interactive today as it's ever been. So I'm trying to keep up and pull things up. But Michael Hogg did have a question. Somebody had a question for you when you came in. But do you feel like that felt like an NCAA tournament game, like as far as atmosphere? You mentioned the crowd not being as full as it was.
Yeah, I think every away game in the Big Ten, for the most part, except maybe a couple of arenas, probably feels like that, and maybe in many cases, probably more so. Because you're at a neutral site in an NCAA game, and it's going to be half and half. Whereas here, there were a decent amount of Purdue people there, but it looked like a whole lot of MSU season ticket holders decided they weren't going to be able to go to the game and just didn't even offer them for sale to prevent Purdue people from getting a hold of them. I'm guessing that's why there were so many empty seats. But yeah, to me, road environment in the Big Ten is a worse environment than neutral sites in NCAA. So the fact that they've pulled 2 of these out now with freshman guards and, quite frankly, freshmen. Zach hit the game-winning shot, but like Loyer's second half was big in this game. So I do need to get on the road, though, Greg, here soon.
What? Oh, you did such a good job of getting back to your house. You're live.
This isn't my house. This is
not
my
your
buddy's
house. Your friend's
right.
house that you came and visited. So I was proud of you. You get back to the house in quick fashion. You come into the studio. Thought you were going to do it from your truck. So I was pleasantly surprised to see you live from a children's bedroom.
It's not a children's room. They don't even have kids.
All right. Well, everyone's going to be patiently awaiting your 10 thoughts on the game on Boiler Diehards Facebook group, which has, 10,000 followers of a Facebook group. It's a private group for those of you tuned in that aren't aware, and really fun, interactive Purdue Boilermakers sports athletic group that you should follow if you're on Facebook. Kraig's, founder and administrator there. But before we get those 10 thoughts, why don't you give us your final thoughts here on Boilers in the Stands before we let you hit the road?
I think there's a lot to learn from this game in general, because like I said, I think Michigan State was able to do some things that nobody did to us for 40 minutes consistently. So I think there's going to be some going back to the drawing board and seeing what they can do better defensively, against those high ball screens, pin down handoffs and whatnot, where Zach's trying to drop back and defend and giving up that mid-range game. And maybe they don't. Maybe they just play the averages and say over time, we don't think enough people are going to be able to consistently hit those against us. But, like Aidan said, I think it exposed a little bit just defensively where some of our limitations are against really good athletic guards that can go ISO and just break people down also. But so I think there'll be some going back to the drawing board on that or looking at things they can do. But man, at the end of the day, this is just a huge, huge win because now we're 5-1, 6-1 in the Big Ten. Yeah, 6-1 in the Big Ten, and I think everybody else. Rutgers still only has 2 losses, right?
Yep.
I'm pretty sure. So, but this gives us a pretty sizable jump and advantage.
And Michigan and Rutgers are the only 2 teams left with 2 losses.
Yeah, I don't have enough faith in Michigan, but I think. Really, I think it's going to come down to Rutgers and us long term, but this gives us such a big jump. I thought if we went 4-1 in each 5-game stretch and ended the season with 4 losses, that would be good enough to win the Big Ten this year. And this puts us well on our way. I think the next game is at Minnie on the road, right? So that theoretically should be a winnable game, although I'm sure Holtman thought that at Ohio State at home as well. So can't let up. But yeah, no, just a great start to Big Ten season and the grit that these guys continue to show in terms of being able to, they've shown that they can beat teams with Zach getting 12 and all the focus being on Zach and the guard stepping up and hitting big shots. And they've shown that they can win games with Zach getting 30 and everybody else kind of contributing a little bit. So multiple ways to win games. And I know Painter talks about that a lot. When you get into the tournament, if you're a team that can win in multiple different ways, you got a lot better shot of making it far.
Absolutely. Appreciate you joining us here today, Kraig. In the stands, on the road, at the Breslin Center. You got the dub. You brought home the dub, and we appreciate your efforts heading up to Michigan State at the Breslin Center and watching that thrilling victory.
In all the away games that I've been to, Braggs, at Illinois, at Wisconsin, at MSU twice, the total score is even. I think they've all been 1-point games, and we won 2 of them and lost 2 of them. I'm pretty sure.
Wow,
so.
Never a dull moment with our Purdue Boilermakers.
Yeah. You want an exciting game? Go on the road with me.
Yeah, no doubt there. All right, Kraig. Well, drive safe, and we'll see you here real soon. Purdue versus Minnesota on Thursday, and we'll probably have a post-game show where the 3 of these guys will be featured, and I will not be blabbering my mouth. I'll be hanging out with my beautiful wife and having some fun at a concert in Evansville, Indiana. I know, random place, but that's where we're
going. Shout out, my hometown.
Old Dominion hitting the scene. So drive safe, Kraig. Thanks for popping in.
Yep, thank you.
All right. So that was Kraig Bowers of Boiler Diehards Facebook group and my trusty co-host here at Boilers in the Stands, Brags in the Stands, whatever you want to call us, but we're having fun doing this. Again, hit that like button. We gotten up to some of our top numbers of live viewers, about 100 people in the live chat on YouTube. So I just want to make sure I say that before we get to the end of the show and some of you guys dip out on us. And we appreciate when you pop in and watch, or if you're watching later, tomorrow or the day after, catching up with this, please hit that like button on the link of this show. It's going to help get us, grow us bigger to where other Purdue fans can find us. Subscribe to the channel, and the bigger we get, the more fun we'll be able to do with bringing you guys coverage. So we really appreciate everyone tuning in. Let's get into some more of the nuts and bolts, because we've kind of really only scratched the surface when talking about Zach Edey and Fletcher Loyer. I don't know where you want to go with this. Braden Smith, only 4 points on the day, 1 of 4 shooting, 26 minutes because he was in foul trouble, hanging around with 4 fouls at the end. Matt Painter playing a little bit of poker, playing him at the end with the 4 fouls. Not a very productive day from Braden. Got beat, on the defensive end a few times. Why don't we go there, because he obviously is one of the stars of the team, and then we'll move to some of the bench players if you guys want to touch on those. Aidan, what did you see from Braden Smith today and some of the struggles he had?
Yeah, just tough matchup, right? Like, they're physical. They're a whole lot bigger than he is. I think the foul trouble messed with him a little bit. I think for Braden's a guy who, watching him play over the years, really feeds off rhythm. When he's in a good rhythm, he can go on little bursts where whether it's with his passing or his shooting, he can kind of take over a game a little bit. We've certainly seen that against Marquette, Ohio State, and some other games. But, when he's out of rhythm and he's not as featured, he can get a little timid. We've seen that before as well, right? Like, he'll not look for his own shot as much. And I don't think he got his number called as much today. I obviously don't think he played as many minutes as he typically did today. Kind of just got lost in the shuffle. Like, they're running a lot of sets, running a lot of stuff for Edey, running a lot of stuff for Loyer. So, I didn't think he had his best game. But again, when they're hard hedging like they are, it's difficult. And to still get to 6 assists was nice. I think, again, there was some carelessness, the turnover where he just got lazy with that little Iverson cut over the top, throwing it to Morton or somebody. They stole it, went down. He got a foul. Just a couple things where he needs to take a little bit better care of the ball, and obviously blowing that layup. But again, like, the guy's 5'11", get that ball up. He's shooting from underneath the rim. So it's kind of a weird situation there where I don't think any other player in the team would have missed that layup. But, I don't know. Weird game, but I guess did enough to win. I thought he fought on the defensive end. I didn't think it was his fault on a lot of those mix-ups. I thought Jenkins was at fault quite a bit. I thought Loyer got bullied a few times. Newman. I mean, Painter was trying everybody on those guards.
Yeah.
On the non-Morton matchup, he was trying everybody, and he pulled Braden at times for defense. Went defense with Braden, kept him in offensively. Would put in Jenkins, would put in Newman, just kind of trying to throw a little bit more length in Newman's case and a little bit more size in Jenkins' case at him. And not his best game, but certainly a good experience. I mean, on the road at Breslin's no easy place, despite what Kraig might say. So not a bad day for Braden. I didn't think overall. The 4 turnovers gotta get down, but not a bad day.
Yeah,
Joe,
no, I think.
Go ahead. I was just going to say your thoughts. I'm just talking.
To the minutes thing, I'm have them pulled up here. He played 26 today, which is his 3rd fewest on the year. He played 25 against Duke, and then he played 22 against Florida A&M in that blowout. So that's why. And so I hadn't really thought of that about the rhythm, but that makes a lot of sense because his best stretch came. Now I'm looking at notes. I'm not looking at the screen. I'm sorry. Came with about 7-8 minutes into the second half, and that he was in a flow at that point. I don't think he got subbed out before that. I mean, he had the 3 straight pick and rolls. He had the
oop.
2 straight. He had the oop,
then the kickback to Mason Gillis.
Yep,
right.
Both of those were off the pick and roll.
Then the throw across, right? Was that what it was? Who was that?
Yeah, I think. I don't remember. Probably was Loyer.
I think the throwback to Gillis was like early in the game, wasn't it?
I don't know.
The one that he made?
Yes. Okay. I'm
throwing
Joe off right now.
No.
I was trying to put my memory to the test.
I can't remember either.
Because he had those for sure too. But then the stretch in the second half, he actually, I think what I'm talking about is he got the lob to Edey, and then he got another one where it's more of a drop off to Edey, and Edey got the and one, and then I think also scored. It was like a 3-minute stretch. He was finally in rhythm, and then I think he picked up a foul and had to be subbed out. So I hadn't thought about that before you said it, Aidan, but that makes a lot of sense. Him being a very rhythm player, you'd like to see more aggression, of course, but he also had 6 assists, so he was looking to facilitate. And I think this one maybe wasn't as much looking to as more just taking what the defense gave, which is he's elite at drawing that big last second in the pick and roll and then just throwing it up to Edey.
Yep. That was the most impressive one because he pick and rolls to the hoop. You can tell he wants to oop it, but he doesn't have it initially. He could have forced it, but instead he's so patient. He takes every inch to that rim and waits for the defensive, the guy that's guarding him to commit. And once that very last split second where he could have just went up with it and got it blocked, instead, once the commit comes, then boom. Because Zach's so tall, he's standing right there waiting for it no matter how long he's like basically behind the backboard, I mean, in essence. And then he's throwing it up to him for the easy dunk. It just shows how good Braden is. He's got eyes in the back of his head. He doesn't panic, and he understands patience and the timing of everything to be able to pull off a play like that as a freshman in his 16th game or whatever it is, 17th, is just unbelievably impressive.
Yeah, and I think it's so hard you really can't teach a point guard to play with pace. That's one of the things that's really hard to teach. That's really just you either have it or you don't. Do you play at pace in ball screen action? Do you not? Eric Hunter did not. He was not a true point guard, right? Nice player for us, but not a true point guard. Braden is a true point guard. He plays with elite pace. That's probably the best part of his game, honestly, and it opens up windows for him. Just saw this comment pop up. Do you think Morton needs to shoot more? We talked a little bit about that earlier. No, he should shoot the in rhythm ones, I think, for sure, to keep the defense honest. But we have talked a little bit, Joe, about, just attacking closeouts, right? Or in this case tonight, attacking the open space because they weren't even closing out. If you're open for three, you're open to drive to the lane and create for somebody else. So, and he's such a good passer. I really think that could unlock a little bit for this offense. But at the same time, I want him to keep shooting because the one he hit against Ohio State, if he's just not shooting, we're not going to get that, So it's a difficult thing, and I know Ethan wants to shoot better. He's grinding. I'm sure he's working hard, and it might come. But there's the ones where he takes a second, and then it ends up a little flat, I've noticed with him. When he takes a second or two, his shot just comes off a little flat. When he's right in rhythm saying, I'm shooting this before he even gets the ball, it usually looks a little bit better. So maybe it's just a mentality thing, but I think if he could get a piece of that paint and draw in some help defense, maybe, again, he's always surrounded by 4 good shooters or 3 in Zach. So, we'll see. I don't know if that's going to be an adjustment he makes or if they just want him to keep shooting because you don't want to break his confidence either. But
yeah, and I've been a big proponent of him just shoot, keep shooting. They'll fall. They're obviously not falling because I didn't want it to get to the point where it did today, and that is there was two of his 3 threes. I think one of them for sure. Hoggard turned his back. He didn't even attempt to even step out to Morton. He said, all right, you're shooting. That's fine. And that's where, I think Aidan said, if you're that wide open and they're going to disrespect you that much, if you're confident, take the shot, sure, do it. But if you're that open, he had probably 10 feet of space before he would even come close to hitting somebody. Drive. You're a really good passer. You're a really, really good passer. You can generate a paint touch from there and then facilitate. I'm a big fan of Morton, and so maybe I am a little biased, but I know he's going to get a lot of hate, and he didn't play well today. I'm not saying that at all. There was a reason he wasn't playing down the stretch. But what he provides defensively, he's got to be out there. Nobody can replicate what he can do for Purdue on defense. You just got to figure out something. Just be some sort of productive on offense, whether it's cutting. Like I said, it's really attacking closeouts, just getting into the paint if the shot's not falling. And then if you're wide open, in rhythm, confident, then still let that thing fly. That's at least where I'm at. I know everybody's going to have a different opinion, but.
And let's be clear, guys, who do you want out there? Newman and Jenkins combined for 0 points, the same amount as Ethan. So, I think Painter would love for Newman or Jenkins to be offensive contributors, but they've been inconsistent as well. And so then it just becomes, do I take my far and away my best perimeter defender out for a little bit of offense that we may or may not be getting, or do I leave him in there? Yes, he's a 0, but he is a good passer. He might hit a 3, the occasional thing. I think that's Painter's decision. And you saw him tonight. He tried those other guys. He wanted those other guys to produce. He didn't want to keep playing Morton when he was shooting 0 for 7. But again, Newman made a critical error early in the second half. Joe and I were talking about it, like the one where Walker got that rhythm three to make it 27-25 right before the half, like where Ethan fell down. Hogard might have pushed off. It was a flop, whatever. Like Newman comes flying in on a mid-range shot that Hogard had and just completely leaves Walker. Like, dude, you got to play two in that situation, right? You got to kind of stun at him, make it look bigger than you are, let him go drive into Edie or take a tough two. Don't just leave Tyson Walker. Like, come on, and those are the things that happen, unfortunately, too often when Brandon Newman's out there defensively. I don't think you can play Gillis first and Edie. I don't think Gillis moves his feet quick enough, not to guard some of these guys. Because again, it's like what you're really asking is, can the three guard their best perimeter guy? And I don't think Gillis could have hung with Walker or Hogard tonight. Maybe Hogard a little bit. That would have been interesting.
Maybe in a pinch on one play, you get switched in the clutch, but so chase them all game, it's a lot to ask for.
Yeah, but just the situational awareness defensively when Newman's out there is frustrating. And so there'll be games where he's 3 for 7 from three or 3 for 6 from three, and he's got to be out there because he's valuable. But tonight, I think he struggles with physicality often, and they ran him. Painter usually runs him at least one set the first time he goes out there. They ran him a little double screen floppy action where he ran off curled it and had a three and just missed it. And, he didn't make his mark on the game. And so it's, I understand the frustration with Ethan Morton, but it's also a situation of like, give me an alternative, and I'm sure Painter's thinking that same thing.
Right. And Joe Griffin says, great points. Earlier he said, thanks, Guzzy.
Yeah, Joe, you're having some
trouble. Joe's having some struggles with his spelling on his computer. That's okay. It's not easy when you're typing out on your phone. I'm just messing with you, Joe. But no, I mean, it's not even just the shooting, right? Like you said, it's defense. It's also, it's not just defense and shooting. It's also running the offense. Brandon Newman, he gets 16 minutes, one turnover, but I've talked about this for 2 years now, because I know a lot of people, especially last year, were enamored with the idea of getting Brandon Newman more minutes, but he just panics. He panics, and it's hard to watch. It's frustrating because obviously he's talented and he's a very good defender. He helps rebound the basketball. So I'm not saying that, he's not capable, but Joe says I'm 70. LOL.
Look at Boiler
I
Navy.
won't be typing when I'm 70. I'll be lucky to understand how to use a phone at that point. So shout out to you, Joe. But appreciate you tuning in. But that's the thing with Brandon, because that's where I said we'd talk about some of the players we can be critical of today, and I think Brandon falls under that category. It's just I'm just back to that point with Brandon where it terrifies me when he's in there. I don't care what the rotation is. I love Brandon. He's from the area I'm from. He went to Valpo. I'm from Crown Point. Watched it. I covered him. I did high school coverage with Region Sports Network and watched him for 4 years at Valpo, and I root for him. But it's the bottom line is he's erratic. He panics at times with the ball in his hand. The ball came to him. He turned the ball over, let it go in the backcourt. Like Aidan pointed out, defensive decisions. It just scares me with Brandon at times. And it surprises me, like at the end of the game when Matt put him in there, and I just, to this point of this season, I am more and more surprised with how Matt's like, it's almost like Matt's like testing himself. Like, how long can I let Brandon be in there and not lose my mind? Because I know watching Matt last year, he had a lot of frustrations with Brandon. So it's like he's trying to trust him in these different situations. How surprised are you, Joe, to see him continue to get the minutes, even though he even took one shot that I felt was ill-advised? I mean, it was nowhere close. I know he's capable of making the shot. He came around the curl, so I'm not going to say he shouldn't have taken it, but it was just nowhere close. And you're in such a tight game. Possessions are such, so important. How surprised are you to watch Painter's trust level with Brandon at this point, letting him play big minutes at the end, even with some of the fears that go into him and his play?
It's interesting. It's, it's a lot of probably what you value. obviously Purdue wants to win. Purdue wants to win the Big Ten. Purdue wants to win every game, yada, yada. But also there is, in the back of your mind, like the back of every Purdue fan's mind, there's, a Final Four. And so you might need a guy like Newman. And so you play him now just to get him experience, try to get him going. Maybe you try, maybe so that way this experience can be relied on later. I think it was also a little bit of just, today specifically that Ethan was just a pretty, strong negative on the offensive end. So he was just trying to get something going with Newman, at least Newman is respected as a shooter. And so you can't just ignore him. And so I think that maybe was part of it too, but it's frustrating, but it's also like, I get it. This team's a lot better if he's a legit, 8 to 10 points per game scorer off the bench with solid defense. He has potential. He still might be. He has potential to be Purdue's second best perimeter defender. Like, I think he has the tools. I think it's just, as Aidan said, like he has the breakdowns and stuff. Not that, nobody else, not that everybody else is perfect by any means, but aside from Ethan, he's the most gifted on that side, at least physically, to have, be able to try and shut down these guards. So I think that's probably the reason why maybe some later game, late season experience, just trying to get him going. And then hopefully
and I think,
and you just need Ethan to get some rest at some point too.
And I think they were trying different guys defensively, and he was one of those guys. Like like Joe said, like he's got stretches where I actually think he's a decent on ball defender.
Yeah. That's, I guess, where I'm talking more too.
Yeah, and so they gave him his shot to guard Walker, and that Walker, like as IC Mike was saying, like Walker was cooking everyone in front of him, and that's he doesn't do that often. Like, for anybody who doesn't watch MSU, like that's an outlier.
Well, I totally jinxed it, and I feel like a lot of Boiler fans may have too. When we went up 13, I'm sitting with my friend. I'm like, well, the only way Michigan State, because they were like giving them certain shots and they're missing them, and I was like, well, the only way this is going to become a game is if they get red hot, and they did exactly.
They sure did, and I think
then I'll just stop talking.
Yeah, and the foul trouble spurred that a little bit. I felt like when Braden went out with his second foul, that was, the bench has been prone to some really brutal stretches at times this year. 4 or 5 minutes with a point or a couple points, so we only scored 7-18 Edie. Yeah, he did, and like I said earlier at the top, like, you let a guy like that see a couple go in, and I think part of that's the first one at the end of the first half that Newman, just see ya, I'm helping off for no reason, and there's an in-rhythm 3 for Walker. Now he sees one go down, and lo and behold, he comes out and just cooks in the second half. And obviously, like we talked about, it's miscommunication, and Edie, gets switched out onto him.
Boiler Navy says Newman looks like he gets too flat-footed sometimes, needs to get up on his toes on defense. Just to the point of Painter showing patience with him, letting him get his minutes, even if he has struggles at times. Obviously, you got to give the starters a break at some point, and have some trust in the bench. Go ahead, Aidan.
Yeah, to that point, like, I really think a lot of it's up here with Brandon. The faster your mind's moving when you're on a basketball court, the slower your feet are going to move. Right. And that's what one of my mentors once told me about in coaching is, like, the faster your brain's going, the slower your feet are going to go. So, we see that with a lot of young players, right? Like, oh, wow, this moment looks too big for them. They're out of it. And I think Brandon, it just feels like defensively, he's never really, or even offensively to a little degree, like, he's never really just nailed down the mental game of basketball, the mental side of at least Purdue basketball. Right, all the different things that go into defense and offense at this high level. It still feels like there's just something missing there. I don't know what it is. Maybe it is that. I'd like to look at that, but I do think, like,
it's composure.
Yeah,
it's composure, because you watch how Braden and Fletcher, how the game moves so slow for them. You can see it. It's a visible thing. It's not tangible that you can put on a stat sheet. But then when Brandon gets involved, he's moving it. He's like, he's excited, and it's a totally different feeling. And you can just see how sped up he is in his mind, because it's an intense moment. It's important. And it means a lot to him to not make a mistake. And he can't some people just cannot slow down and breathe in those crucial moments. And the ones that can are special. It's a rare trait to have. So it's, it's not a knock on Brandon. He has great athletic. He wouldn't be playing in the Big Ten if he wasn't a great player. He's a great player. But, when you get to this level, to separate yourselves from the other players that also play in the Big Ten that were also great players at their high school, there's a separator. And what Braden and Fletcher show with their composure is one of those things. Maybe Brandon is a senior, or maybe later down the road this year, he can start to settle in a little bit. But it's hard because the other aspect of it, and Matt talks about this all the time, when you have limited minutes, getting into a rhythm and settling yourself into the game and not worrying about when I'm going back on the bench and wanting to make an impact.
Yep.
Those are other factors.
Great point.
That make you speed up, because those minutes are so important to you. And you can't just play it straight because you're just trying to be a hero, and that's also a factor. That's human nature for anybody that's getting limited minutes. You're seeing that with David Jenkins, who's going to be could have been a 2,000 point career scorer in college, who's been a leader on other teams. He comes here, now he gets limited minutes. He's got to learn to let the game come to him in those limited minutes that he has. It's a totally different aspect of your mentality to approach a game. Sam asks, yeah. I mean, it's not that I figured out Brandon. To me, it's just an observation I have. I think fans last year, anybody that knows me here knows that I'm, good friends with Sasha Stefanovic, and it was frustrating for me to see people be like, get him out of the game, get this guy in the game, when I could understand the difference between who's doing their job correctly and who wasn't.
Yeah,
and
it is.
Go ahead.
Like to our point earlier, like speaking off your point, like I don't know the data on this at all, but to me it feels like when he sees one go in early, like he plays a heck of a lot better.
Sure.
And I think that's true for a lot of players. And to go into your point, Braggs, like he didn't get to see one go in tonight. He rushed his first shot. Painter called his number off that little curl. He just rushed it. It wasn't particularly close. And Painter said in the past, right, he struggles in that role coming off the bench. But we need him. Like somebody said, how do you get more bench production? Like, I don't know. But we need it. Because these guys are going to get into foul trouble some games. And then you're left out there with no Braden and no Fletch at times, or no Edie or whoever it may be. And you're like, what do we do? TKR was stabilizing a little earlier in the year. He's gotten into a bit of a rut, maybe the freshman wall, if you will.
And that's somebody I wanted to talk about next. Your thoughts on TK, because he has been struggling lately.
Yeah.
It seemed like for a minute he was starting to ascend as someone that could really come in and be a difference maker in post play. And now it seems like teams are figuring him out. He's not an above the rim player. He's got a skill set. And he's only a redshirt freshman, so he's got 4 years to hone his craft here. But are there any concerns you're seeing now with how teams are playing him now and how he's struggling a bit?
Oh yeah, I'm concerned. Because it just seems that he's again, we go back to rhythm. Like Matt's talked about it. He feels so bad that TKR only gets 4 to 5 minutes a game right now. And as a coach, you really feel guilty almost when some guys don't get the amount of minutes. Like we've all got players, we want to get more minutes, but we simply can't because we have a dominant player at their position, and that's just simply the case. Why would you take Edie off? He played 36 minutes tonight and was shooting a shot almost half the time down the floor, not to mention being put in a ton of action. Tonight was an unreal game by Edie to play as many minutes as he did. I mean, the constant workload, the constant battling for position, every time down and being put in a ball screen with a stud guard. Like, come on, that's stupid.
And he didn't seem gassed at all ever.
Not at all. He just got madder and madder.
He finished the game-winning shot, and fucking put the works on him to get that game-winning shot too. It was a hell of a move because he's starting to implement the drop step because he wants to go left. He always wants to go
over
left.
His left shoulder.
And a few times this year against lesser opponents, he was doing the drop step to the right and easily laying it in because guys are leveraging knowing he's trying to go left. Well, today he tried to go left or go right more than a few times. He did it against the backup a couple times and it worked easily. But then at the end of the game, he tried it and they blocked it off and he had to kick it back out and reset. So
Yeah.
then at the end of the game on the final play, he almost like faked the drop step for a second and then went to the left and a little spin move action, bang, down the well. And for 37 minutes, all these attempts, for him to finish the game like that just speaks to his stamina and his ability.
Yeah, and you talk about in-game adjustments for coaches, like for players too. Like you saw him over the course of this game slowly begin to adjust his approach from the basic right hook over his left shoulder. Basic, I say basic. For him, it's super basic. And then going to the spin move, faking baseline, spinning back middle. That appeared to be unstoppable. He noticed something with Sissoko. It was on him specifically that he spun on 2 or 3, maybe 3 times, certainly 2 because he had the dunk in the last play, but maybe even a couple more times where he noticed something and spun and just got that easy bucket. But going back to TKR, like, it's there's a lot of good athletes at this level, and he is a 6'7" center right now who isn't particularly explosive.
Is he a 4 to you?
I don't know because
can he defend the 4?
I don't think he can defend
question.
I don't know that he can defend the 4, and I don't know that he's active enough, long enough, really, like to make some of those catches on those dives. Or, I mean, maybe he is a 4, but it feels like he's so good with his footwork and everything that he should be featured in the post. And so maybe he's a 4 on a team that would feature, post touches for a 4, but this team just won't. So he's never going to play next to Edey.
It seems like the thing that TKR needs to bring to his bag is the mid-range jumper, to be able to not have to go to the post up every single time, turn around, face him up, use your agility to get past the guy. And if you can't get past your guy in that way, using your footwork, then you got to be able to do the baseline mid-range jumper and fucking have that. I mean, I'm going back in the day with Luke Longley and Bill Wennington, who had no athleticism, but they were effective because they could either post you up if they had the opportunity or step down that baseline jumper and fucking knock down the mid-range.
And Joe, what do you think about, using him more in ball screens, maybe getting him in short rolling to get into a floater? I don't know. Can anybody do that but Smith? Probably not. So,
I like that thought. I think the short roll specifically, let him catch it like 10 feet. And then, from there, he can either go to a little floater or mid-range, or if he sees the opportunity, then get to his back to the basket. I think that'd be good. Get him some movement so it isn't so pure stagnant right now. I think he can eventually be that guy, or at least maybe not at like the Edey level, obviously, because Edey's nuts. But, to a guy that can be featured some in that role, I think, kind of projecting ahead, I'm just whenever Edey's gone, I think First is probably the perfect complement to him, which is kind of lucky for Purdue. Somebody that can space long. First can guard the 4 or the 5, depending on the matchup. And so maybe like next year or in 2 years, when TKR has to take over more of that starting role or more minutes at least, like maybe once he's in rhythm, he'll be a little better. But I do agree, like you said, and maybe try just some different stuff to get him in moving a little bit more.
Well, yeah, and that's a bit of a concern. We're jumping way too far ahead here because this season is special and we want to enjoy it. But like,
Edey put up 32 and 17.
Yeah, right. But like, what does Braden look like when he doesn't have Edey as a roller? That's a good question because, we look at the personnel of this team. Like, I think First could be a really effective roller. They don't do a lot of First Gillis minutes. I think probably mostly because of guilt by Painter of not putting TKR in. Like, if you're not going to put him in when he's out there, he's never going to come in. Yeah. So I had that thought today. Like, we're not going to see that a lot, even though that could be dangerous. So I don't know. And I think defensively, Bragg's like, he struggles. He can't protect the rim. And if he gets against a real big with some skill, he's in trouble. Like, I'm interested to see him against like Malik Renew from IU, or somebody who's a little taller than him, who has really good footwork, who can post him up on that block and just see what happens. I think tonight was a bit of a one-off just because the weird foul calls, I think he got in his head. Like the little
2 games in a row that happened to him too.
Yeah, 2 games. I feel for him. Like, he's just got really had some bad luck. He was huge in that Duke game, right? I mean, it was one of those games in Portland where he was just huge. So it's certainly the ability's in there, but maybe he is just a normal freshman. We're so entitled because of our 2 other freshmen. but maybe he is a normal freshman and hitting that kind of freshman wall, kind of struggling a little bit here. And hopefully he turns it around and is ready to go for, March and February and into that.
Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah, Smith and Loyer's insane. And then we're like, wait, why can't you TKR? And then it's like, not everybody develops it the same way.
Yeah, and they're having 30 plus minutes a game to develop on the fly. And he's having 4. So
Michael Van Meter says loser was clutch tonight. And he
Walker,
Loyer.
Walker was
loser
the loser and he was clutch.
Yeah, the loser was clutch tonight, and that is Walker, but he certainly didn't play like a loser. But the spelling tonight in the chat,
everybody's just excited from the win.
Struggle bus, it's
it might be the handshake.
And for me too, I know how this is with Twitter.
True.
I got fat fingers. I don't know if these guys do, but I know I do. So sometimes that can be a typo thing. But no, we're messing with you. We're winding down here to the end of this show. We've talked a lot about different things. Anything else for you guys that stands out? I'm just kind of looking over these things. Obviously, 3 bench points. Mason Gillis with the 3 bench points.
Yeah, early in the game. I've got something, which is just that.
Go ahead.
Don't read too much into the rebounding numbers for tonight. I don't think, just because they have a ton of positional size over us, and maybe you should read into that because we might see that in the tournament. But just wasn't our best night on that end. I think that's more of an outlier than anything. Purdue's one of the best rebounding teams in the country. So tonight, getting out rebounded.
A lot of long rebounds.
A lot of long rebounds. They're a very good rebounding team. Don't freak out over that when you're looking at a Newbert's box score or whoever puts up the box score. Don't freak out over that. That to me seems like a little bit of an outlier.
Yeah, I have just a couple random things that I didn't say throughout the show that I wanted to get in. So we're just going to kind of jump around. I have the numbers pulled up. Purdue ran 18 pick and rolls that resulted in some sort of shot, whether it was from the ball handler, the roller, or a kick out to 3. They averaged 1.61 points per possession, which is equivalent to basically shooting 81% on 2s. So they were just lights out on pick and roll. MSU ran 19 for only 0.632 points per possession. They did also have 7 isolations. That was 1.571 points per possession, which is insane. So, so the pick and roll number is kind of down for MSU because some of those turned into isolations. Walker hit 2 step backs on Edie or whatever. But in a system that MSU is supposed to be dominant in pick and roll, Purdue was the one that was more efficient. And then also just going way back, this is early show. Aidan was mentioning rejecting, allowing Walker to reject the screen. And yes, that was a big issue too. And then the couple times he did, and then maybe this is kind of what Aidan was saying too. And I just mistook it, but there was a couple times too. And Walker's so good at it. He does it against everybody. Is he just snakes the screen. And so what he does is he comes off the screen, uses it, and then he just kind of cuts the other way instead of going downhill. And so now this makes that the 1 or 2 times I think Edie got switched onto him was because he snaked it, if I recall correctly. And so he just kind of snakes it out, or even if he didn't, I forget. I know he does it a lot in general, and I know he did it a couple times, I think today. He just snakes it out, and then that just is really tough for the guard to get back. But that was kind of just my 2 random thoughts for that I wanted to get in. Also, okay, I have a third thought, and that's because this is completely off topic. I've been wanting to say it for about 4 shows. I forget every time. Your intro video, Braggs, you can see me dead center. Right there. I'm in the student section, 2nd row. I'm in the overalls. I've been meaning to say that for 4 shows, and just it's in my head now, so I had to say it.
Okay. Well, stay tuned for that because I end the show with it too. So when we end the show, we'll look for Joe in the overalls. Are you on the close side or the far side?
Close. You when the players run out, right over right there over the top.
That Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's on the couch pointing at it.
Yeah, that was me the first time I saw it. I was like, wait.
Okay.
But Aidan, I guess I should. Aidan, do you think he snaked it all, or was it more just when you say reject? Are you saying meaning snaking, or are you saying?
No, I'm not. I'm thinking
you're saying refusing the screen.
Yeah, reject and refuse are the same. I agree that I think he snaked it a few times, but I don't know that. I need to watch it back. I'm giving a very
I was going through it and I was like, I'm not confident in this anymore.
I don't know. I know he does snake it a lot, and he puts that defender in jail. Where you kind of back into your defender. The old Trey Young move that he uses a lot, but again, I got to watch it because it felt to me that when they had it on the side or even when it was on the top, like Purdue was trying to make him use the ball screen and he was just finding a way to reject. And then Edey was just a little late to get into him. And fortunately for Purdue, 2 of them were long 2s that probably should have been 3s. He put his foot on the line.
True.
So
they were barely 2s too.
Yeah.
Well, Icy Mike, who's a buddy of mine on Twitter, asks maybe the silliest question I've ever seen in the chat, and that is, what advice would you give Matt Painter how to run his team? Literally none.
Yeah.
And he's saying it. He's admitting that in the chat.
Go to Twitter and then just scroll for like 10 minutes, and you'll get a lot of
Twitter thinks they got all the answers.
You might want to consult the guy on his radio
the Tailgating 5
True.
crew, the Tailgating M crew guy that called in to the one show, and Brian from Rensselaer, as Icy Mike likes to say, they have good advice, but here
they're really smart guys.
We just bring the observations, but advice for Matt Painter, he doesn't need any advice. And Icy Mike says, I'm like 100%. I have zero beneficial to add what CMP. That is 100% true. This man, he is the best in the business. He is on pace. The Purdue Boilermakers on pace to have the Coach of the Year, National Coach of the Year, and the National Player of the Year.
Yeah, and like the time I met Coach Painter, I shook his hand once, and I couldn't even imagine the look he would give me if I offered any kind of advice. That steely-eyed look that he would get. Yeah, exactly. I would just melt.
That would be his
right
reaction.
on the spot.
If you offered him advice, this is how he exactly.
I think we would just simultaneously combust, like right on the spot.
His patience when they have call-ins to the Matt Painter shows on Mondays.
It's unbelievable.
Rob Blackman. He has such patience and grace with the way he answers it. And it's very funny. And he has a very good sense of humor, too.
He is, but he's terrifying in person.
Yes, he is very terrifying. And when we had him on the show, it was very intimidating as well. He's our first guest this year. But he just, to me, for my money, he's the best coach in the country. Purdue, I was almost going to, screen grab it and bring it for the show tonight. But the video that Purdue put out, a little hype video from a couple days ago, I think it was after the Nebraska game. They put some dramatic music and highlights to it, but it was Matt Painter speaking to his team after the win. And it was just so profound. And I know Matt Painter, this may be Matt Painter. If you got him on a lie detector test, I bet you he'd say this is his favorite team he's ever coached, because they are ultra talented, but they are ultra buy-in. They are the ultimate Matt Painter team. They run the system how he wants. They listen. He talks about Zach Edey all the time. He hasn't been in the sport long enough for people to be gassing him up about how great he is. And I don't think he's taking shots at any previous player. I think he's just simply stating that Zach's still so raw that he's just still a sponge with everything they're trying to teach him, that he doesn't question it. A lot of players, when they're coming up through the high school ranks and they're highly ranked or 5-star, 4-star, even 3-star recruits, they're the best player at their high school for 4 years. Everyone's groveling at them as they're walking through the hallways of high school, and the parents are telling them how great they are. Then they get a Big Ten scholarship and they're just gassed up so much. And Zach hasn't ever had that. So he's just wanting to learn. And when a coach in college is trying to teach a player, the player then is turning around and talking to the 5 people that are in their circle and their friends, and they're even Raphael Davis, he said at one point, I can't believe I ever questioned what Matt Painter was trying to teach me. So even he admitted that while he was playing, he didn't always believe what the coach was telling him, because it's ego. It's your pride as a young player, your immaturity as a young person in life. You don't always listen to your authority figures, even if they're wanting what's best for you. I think anybody that's in the chat that's a parent can understand this. And as you get older, you understand that they were trying to teach me what's best. Zach is just listening and executing. And for Matt, that's like a cyborg of a player. You literally couldn't draw up a better situation for him. Fletcher and Braden are sponges right now. They're not thinking about other things heading in their future. They're locked into being the best damn Purdue player they can possibly be. They're freshmen, still trying to prove everything. So there's this hungriness and attention to detail that is just so profound with this team. And like I said, with the hype video, Matt Painter's talking about, when the game is over and you've won, where is your focus? What are you thinking? Are you thinking about how good you are? Are you thinking about, how the ranking of the next team's opponent? Or are you thinking about how you need to get better? And he's like, and that's a, profound moment for a coach, like just talking to his teammates or his team. And at one point he goes, let's look at these teams at how they can help us get better, because we're trying to be champions and we're not champions yet. And I just think he is just in his bag with this team. Like, I know they're good. I know they're listening. I'm going to coach the shit out of this team and they're going to run through a brick wall for me. And I think that's what you're seeing with this team. I obviously we're all really excited. I was really excited about last year's team, but I just think there is something special to this team when it comes to attention to detail, the hustle mentality, the grittiness, but also the composure is also a big factor with these guys. And it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, no, it's, Painter's one of, if not the best. And you say he's in his bag, and I agree. For just many reasons, even just offensively, some of the sets he runs and stuff, like, because he knows his players will run them, and he knows his players are going to cut hard, and he knows players are going to set strong.
And when we had Ethan on, he joked that when Shrewsbury was here, he drew up all the plays. Matt didn't draw up the plays.
Yep.
And he said when Shrewsbury left, he really didn't know how good or if Matt could draw up plays. And he was so impressed that not only could he call him up, he has a million plays in his bag. So we're just seeing a different level of coaching right now with Matt.
Yeah. Yep. And he's just deep in it. Like, just gets any set he wants. It's like just so much fun to watch. Like, I'm very thankful that I root for Purdue, that I go to Purdue, because, well, for many reasons, but in terms of, supporting the basketball team, like, they're just objectively very, very fun to watch. Like, all the sets they run and the movement, like, you don't see that from all the teams. And not that, other teams aren't fun to watch at all. I love a lot of Big Ten teams, honestly, but just the movement and how much everybody buys in, like you said, it's just so much fun to watch and be a part of in some small way.
Yeah. So we're rounding third. Icy Mike with the tough question. He's giving me the toughest question here to end the show. Yes. For anybody that's not familiar with the show and the coverage we've done the last 3 years, me and Sash are good friends with his family. We grew up in the same town, watched him play every dribble of high school. That is why I am such a big Purdue fan that I am today. So that's how it started for me. We are now moving forward. Now that Sasha's gone, he's playing pro ball in Serbia. Still stay in touch with him. Watching him ascend from a 3-star recruit who got 2 minutes a game as a freshman to a senior leader on a team that was the first ever Purdue men's basketball team to become number 1 in the country ever in this program's history, to stay top 10 all year when they had to play Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl, game-winning half-court shot heartbreakers against Rutgers, game-winning shots from Tyson Walker and Indiana in the corner. I think there were 6 teams that stormed the court on last year's Purdue team. The most talented Purdue team they've ever had, even more talented than this year's team.
Crazy.
When you consider Jaden Ivey and Travion Williams with NBA potential. Sasha even got some run in the summer league with the San Antonio Spurs. Certainly for a guy that came from Crown Point High School as a 3-star recruit, he got everything he could out of his potential as a player, and he's still getting better as we speak in Serbia. I cannot speak more highly of what he brought to the table. Coach Painter talked about how Sasha could coach the team. If Matt had to step away for 2 games, he said this a few times on the record, that Sasha could coach the team. So there was a lot of intangibles that maybe some fans do not appreciate when it comes to Sasha. He also got the ball into the post more consistently than any player that I've seen in the 5 years I've covered this team. They're doing a good job of this year. Loyer had a really nice inlet pass to win the game for Zach Edey. That was a big element of that game-winning shot. But to answer your question, there is no question Fletcher Loyer is a higher caliber player than Sasha Stefanovic. And that's not a knock at Sash. That is a testament to how great Fletcher Loyer is. He's going to break a lot of records for this school. Sasha finished top 7. He has the 7th most 3-point shots in in Purdue's program history. Fletcher Loyer is going to be top 3, if not 1. That's how good Fletcher Loyer is for this team. I can't speak on Thompson for Smith, but we, it's more Smith. Or Eric.
Smith.
When you talk about those two guys, yes, of course. Those guys would have been so great. They needed a point guard facilitator last year to help Jaden out because Jaden did a lot of the ISO stuff. Obviously, that would have never happened. If Sasha was on this year's team, I think he would have fit really well with this year's team. A guy that does buy in, team basketball. He's always looking for to pass from the good shot to a great shot. So I think he would have fit right in with these guys too. But hey, everything happens for a reason. But I appreciate the tough question. I'm not afraid to answer it. No question, Fletcher Loyer's ability. Sasha, as a freshman, was getting maybe 2-3 minutes a game. Fletcher played 31 minutes today and hit some of the most clutch shots. The other day, he dropped 27 and set a freshman record for 6 threes in a game as a freshman, most three-pointers ever. So, Fletcher Loyer's on another level.
Yeah.
And so is Braden Smith. And these two guys are here for 4 freaking years. That's really exciting.
By the way, I don't know that, if I could give my take, I don't know that Fletcher would have changed Fletcher for Sasha would have changed anything about last year. I think last year, he would have basically been in the same role as Sasha, right? And maybe Sasha was even a little bit better defender, I would say. So, I don't know. I think just the Ivy, Travion, Edie triumvirate just didn't work at the highest level. It didn't mesh. So I don't know how much that would have changed last year. I agree Fletcher's a better player than Sasha, but I don't know how much it would have changed last year.
I mean, he certainly, obviously, Fletch can knock him down. Sash could too. Sash hurt his finger against Wisconsin. He would never admit to me. I was trying to literally pull it out of him if he was still hurt at the end of last year playing because he had his finger taped up. And he obviously went through a shooting drought in the Big Ten tournament and then in the March Madness tournament. Hit a few shots, but nothing like he's capable of. And I think he'd be the first one to tell you that. One day he'll come on and maybe we'll pull some teeth out of him, reliving some memories. But maybe as it becomes more of a distant memory and not this, because I'm sure it still pains him the way it ended last year. I know anytime somebody brings up St. Peter's to me, I'm pissed off. So it is what it is. They did some great things. Got to the Sweet 16. They went to the Big Ten championship. And 10 years ago, that used to be a great year for Purdue basketball. And now for Purdue basketball, they've lifted the bar of expectations. And those kind of years is not good enough. So it shows you how close they are to knocking on the door to winning the whole damn thing. And I do believe that is in their future with this team and with this head coach. So that's a long rant, but I got no problem being put on the spot with my guy. We can give fair analysis here at Boilers in the Stands, and I think that's about it. Any quick final thoughts? Aidan, I'll start with you, and then we'll finish with Joe, and then I'll call this a day.
Yeah, just a really important win. Didn't play great. Probably could have lost it, but again, that's life in the Big Ten on the road, and it doesn't get any easier. I mean, Minnesota's is going to be competitive. They really struggle with Edie, but at the barn is always tough. And you look ahead. Maryland's a nice. Maryland at home should be a win, but you look forward after that, and it gets tough, man. At Michigan, home for Michigan State, home for Penn State, at Assembly Hall, home for Iowa. So it's. There's no rest for the weary, but winning a game like this, which again, I think I'd say was one of the tougher games remaining on Purdue's schedule. This game always delivers, it seems, in recent years. Painter, Izzo, MSU, Purdue, usually on Fox on the big primetime slot. So really just a great to get the win. Second half Fletch, man. Second half Fletch.
Second half Fletch all day long, indeed. Joe, you're getting some shit in the chat. Mad says, is Joe out of light bulbs?
My lighting was fine. I was trying to switch it up because last time I had this lamp over here.
Yeah.
And it was I felt like it was weird, but we're working on it.
He's having some fun with you. Joe, your final
that's
thoughts
one of my best friends. So
okay, Sis. I see what's up. Go ahead.
But final thoughts, just another gritty win. Purdue does what they need to do. Edey's insane, obviously. Loyer's absolutely clutch in the second half. And it's just a team that finds ways to win. 2-1 in the past five games on games that just come down to the last like 10 seconds. So just the experience for these young guys to be able to be in these games. Obviously, Edey's was in plenty of these games last year, more so on the wrong end. But like just getting these guys the experience heading into where we're kind of getting into the midst of it all now, the real grind, the February where it's just going to be cold, dark days and lots of basketball. And then you get into March. I think this is experience that can really be relied on going ahead.
Yeah, and let the viewers know, because I see in the chat, Michael Vandermeer says, looking forward to the Feed the Post tomorrow. Yeah. Why don't you guys, Joe, why don't you let them know where they can find Feed the Post and how they can listen to what you guys are doing on your own?
Yeah, so Feed the Post, me and Aidan's podcast, we will be recording one tonight. It'll be up tomorrow. We do 2 a week, one Purdue, one Big Ten oriented. You can find them on Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And then you can also, we have a Twitter account for it at feedthepost_. So all that will be posted there too. You can find me on Twitter at Joe_Jackson2210. I will be doing a game thread as I do after every game. Hopefully Twitter actually allows me to post videos this time, which would be cool. But that'll be up tomorrow, where I just kind of break down some of the game and, the schematics throughout it all. I'm also a writer at cbbreview.com. I will be having 2 articles out this week, one about Braden Smith and just kind of what he's been able to do to, be successful this year. And then I'm also going to have a Big Ten article focusing on some 5 freshmen that have really impressed me in the Big Ten so far this year. So a lot of stuff, but the big one is the Twitter at Joe_Jackson2210. Everything else will be posted there and you can find it.
Yep. And the video breakdowns are great, and your following is growing exponentially because the coverage you bring, both of you guys, the coverage you bring is second to none as far as I'm concerned. So I'm very grateful that you guys agree to come on board with what we're trying to do here with these post-game shows. Meeting of the Minds, and Kraig as well, who joined us earlier. Want to thank him for hustling back to, where he's staying out in Michigan State, and was live at the Breslin Center. Got to see that thrilling victory in person, and then hop back and was able to come and give his thoughts here on our post-game show. That's a little long-winded, but you know me, I'm never short of words. Michael Hogg says he has to ask, do you see Aidan getting a technical foul during a game he coaches? Compliments from me. So is Michael a referee?
He must be. Yeah, he must be, right? I don't know.
Do it.
I'm still learning how to work the refs a little bit. One of my players got a tech on Saturday, so that was new. But I'm still learning how to work those refs. I don't really have a great feel for it yet.
Yeah. All right. We'll get that T next time. Now Michael is the mark. It looks like he's an umpire too. So
wow.
We'll see. Maybe one day we'll bring Mike on for his, analysis if there's a really bad call that costs us.
That would be interesting.
Then we could yell at him the whole time about why refs ruin our lives. So he says he is. All right, Mike.
Okay. Well, I'll see you around. I'm going to be on you.
All right. We're going to start leaning on you for some of these, when we start inevitably complaining about the refs and your thoughts. So, appreciate everyone tuning in here. Again, hit that like button on your way out. If you've been tuning in this whole time, it means you're enjoying what you're seeing. If you're enjoying it that much, it means a lot to us. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the link on the YouTube. I mean, if you're liking it in other places, that's great. We appreciate it. But on YouTube specifically, it's really going to help us grow. We've been getting a lot of viewers to that channel and a lot of new subscribers and everything else. And that's because of you interacting with the show, commenting on the show, and then most importantly, liking the show. Boiler Navy did ask earlier, and I'll answer it and address it, about the ranking thoughts. I'm so past it now. I was obsessed with it to start the year about where they are nationally ranked. Right now, they're ranked 3rd in the country. Houston and Kansas are ahead of them. Alabama certainly looks like a tough team. Houston almost lost a game. Kansas almost lost a game. Purdue's obviously been in a few barn burners of their own. I'm fine with where they are. If they get back to number one, great. Could they be ranked number one over those two teams? Yeah, they have the best resume of the three. How these national rankings work typically, if you're one and you lose a week and the other two teams didn't, just because you all have one loss means you're going to drop. That's just how it works. It may not make sense, and they're not going off of what the true numbers or the resumes show. At the end of the day, who gives a shit? I mean, they got the number one ranking for a month. That's great. They're probably, as long as they don't fall off the wagon too hard, going to stay in the top 10 if they don't slip on the banana peel, so to speak. Obviously, staying up in the top 5 is important to try to get a 1 seed. So I'm not trying to downplay it that much because it does have importance for dreams of getting to a Final Four. So we just have to continue to monitor that. As long as they take care of their business, they're going to be there right at the top with a potential at a 1 seed. But certainly no guarantee because there's no days off in the Big Ten. Wisconsin, 1 injury to Tyler Wall. Now they've gone on a skid. They fall out of the top 25. Rutgers have moved up into the top 25. I think they're 23rd in the country right now. So that's where it is.
They control their own destiny for a 1 seed right now.
Yep.
Which is all you can, you want to, that's where you want to be. So.
Yeah. So Michael Hawk's threatening people. He's saying sub to the channel or I'm going to tee all of you up for not doing so. We appreciate the support. Thank you, Joe and Aidan, for all your patience. It's toughing it out at almost a 2-hour show. We'll try to keep these between an hour and a half. Icy Mike, putting the cables on me, asking me the tough questions with my guy. So I had to go into a little bit of a rant there. But always love talking Boiler basketball with you two gentlemen. Kraig, once again, shout out to Kraig Bowers for coming on the show. And thank you to everyone that tuned in here today. Thrilling victory, another impressive win by a young team that's got some big goals in their scopes. They can have a Big Ten championship. They can do some damage in March. That's for damn sure. So be on the lookout for a post-game show coming up on Thursday night, Purdue versus Minnesota. Purdue once again on the road. I'm going to be out of town, but we're still going to set up the post-game link. We're going to let Joe, Aidan, and Kraig steer the ship. It'll be my first time personally giving up the reins to this baby of mine that I've called Brags in the Stands here for 3 years and letting others, have fun with it without me there. So I know you guys will do me proud. I trust you guys in the analysis you bring, and I know that it's going to be a great show. And it'll probably be a better show and a much shorter show because you won't have me rambling on like I'm doing right now. So have a good day, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good night. Boilers win, and make sure to tune in Thursday night. And always, always Boiler up.